So, Adriana, are we waiting for many more people? Because time is quite tight.
No, we are going to start right now.
Okay.
I just started recording. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Oikos Leap webinar. It's a big pleasure to have you and welcome you all over the world to see the webinar in Campaining in universities. We are today here in such a good hands. We have Sophia Tickell with us, and if you have been at the Oikos Future Lab, you have already met her, and I know that a lot of people loved her, and she had a really everyone was excited to have her the whole time. She is actually co-founder and director and partner at Matthews, and she has many experience with the topic that we're leading today. And we are going to, she is going to be leading the session with us, and also Christopher will have a short interview. But who is going to do the main work today is you, because it's going to have a lot of group work. We have sent you a handout by email. If you have not received it, please let us know. Just write an email in the info@oikos-international.org, and we will send you right now the handout if you don't have it yet, okay? I will repeat, info@oikosinternational.org. And it would be amazing if you could rename yourself if you haven't done it yet, and put your name and your organization or Oikos chapter, so we can know where you are. Because during the group work, we are going to try to divide you either into your chapters, or we are going to put you with people near in the same region, so you can have a really productive discussion. Right now, I will hand over to Sophia so she can lead us today. Thank you very much, Sophia, to be with us.
Well, thank you, Adriana, and thank you for all your help in helping set this up. It's really exciting to me to be able to talk to everybody about advocacy and campaigning. We have quite an ambitious agenda, as Adriana says. We're hoping to do some group work as well as to do some kind of discussion and inputs to put some framing around that group work. My starting point today is going to be about really the Oikos vision statement and the ambition to be this campaigning and advocacy organisation that's seeking to influence university authorities to support the integration of sustainability into education, into research and into management. And of course, there's lots of different ways to work to those goals. There's lots of different ways to try and achieve them. And they will include things like public campaigning, they will include working in coalitions, there'll be networks, they'll be doing media and communications work, and there'll be advocacy and lobbying and campaigning. So today's work, we can't do everything in 90 minutes. So what we decided to focus on in this seminar is the latter. It's sort of, what is campaigning, how does it work, and how to think about it as part of your influencing strategy. So I'm going to do a short presentation which really draws very heavily on all the work on campaigning and advocacy that I did when I was at Oxfam. And then we're going to engage Christopher in conversation, because what I'm going to try and tease out in my earlier thoughts are what to think about when trying to influence people, and what do you need to think about in terms of targets. So then we'll go into a conversation with Christopher, in a conversation with what he's learned in his role at Oikos. And then we're going to go into the group work. And the group work is going to have two bites at it. We're going to ask you a couple of questions, invite you to answer those questions in the group. And then we're going to come back into the plenary. After the first group work, we're going to come back into plenary and have an opportunity for you to give some feedback and also to have some questions. And then after the second, we're then going to go straight back into plenary and answer the question that you asked in the group, but also a sort of broader question about how Oikos International and the staff team and the students, what can they do to help you in what you're trying to do. So we're going to run for an hour and a half. We're going to be somewhat flexible in terms of the timetable that we've got, because we really want to try and achieve all those goals. But that's what we have for you today, and we are going to run for about 85 minutes from now on. So if it's okay with you, I'd just like to to start with just this very short presentation to help frame and the conversations we're going to have later. So first of all, the Oikos vision. And just to reiterate, Oikos has defined the goal as transforming management and economics education to speed up the transition to a sustainable world. And then it comes with this lovely belief statement that education can and should be transformed by students. And that means creating a network of student change agents. It means challenging the contents of what's taught. Is challenging how things are taught and raising awareness of the possibility of change. So beautiful. So, I mean, that's the starting point. So I've tried to kind of frame my thoughts around what that might mean in terms of thinking about campaigning. So I would like to share with you then this campaign strategies. So, and this, as I say, the outline here that you have in front of you now really draws from the work that I did at Oxfam and in various other campaigns. As some of you know, when I spoke to you in St. Gallen, I'm also involved in a coal campaign trying to phase coal out of Europe. There are other campaigns I've been involved with. And we've and lots of people who are involved in campaigns try to pass down what is involved in campaigning. And these are the basics. So I thought I'd write this up so that you can have it and take it away and do what you like. So the first is really, what is the problem that you're trying to solve? And I think the more focused you are on that problem, the more likely you are to get good outcomes. Then your vision statement, what do you actually want to happen? And again, the clearer that you can be about what you want to happen, the better a pathway you can draw between what you think is the problem and then how you might solve it. Then I think that it's really important to think hard about who can actually affect change. Who are the people within the system who actually have the ability to make things different? And that's an incredibly important part of any campaign. Then thinking about, when you've got your vision statement, you think about the objectives. What are the outcomes that you want to identify? And what are the milestones on the way that would help you know whether you're actually getting towards where you want to go? Then there's this incredibly important piece about power analysis, which is thinking about the nature of the power of the people you're trying to influence, who are the allies and partners who might help you get to them or who might influence them separately, who are your enemies, who's going to try and prevent you from doing what you're doing. And enemies can be very kind of overt and people who are sort of hostile to your ideological thinking, but they can also be people, and especially I think in the context of Oikos, they can be people who just don't want change. It's too inertia, it's that sort of, we've done things like this for 100 years, why should we change it? And what are the obstacles that are going to get in the way? And then I think thinking about what your key messages are that you all carry. So if somebody asks an Oikos person, what is it that you're trying to achieve here? It's pretty consistent. So you get this kind of consistency of idea, which is super important in campaigning. And then you get into the brass tacks about what are your strategies and your tactics. Are you going to use the media? Are you going to lobby people? Are you going to use communications? Is popular mobilization, actually generating a large amount of public opinion, really helpful to you? And then, of course, you have to think about what resources you have at your disposal. So any campaign will need to incorporate, any campaign strategy is going to need to incorporate all these elements. And I think it's worth saying that the key difference between a campaign strategy and an organizational strategy, and I know that you've done a lot of work on organizational strategy, which is why I mentioned this, is the campaign strategy focuses on the external world and who you want to do what to achieve change. So I don't have time to go in depth into all these elements today. So what I'm going to focus on is the influencing and communicating with your target audience. And I'm doing that for two reasons. One is there is incredibly good material that's coming out, particularly of people who've been trying to campaign on climate change for a long time. And they've, because people started with this kind of information deficit idea in climate change, that if only people knew about what was happening, they would radically change the way they're doing things. And of course, what we know now is that it's much more complicated than that. And I think that the knowledge that's coming out of that work is so useful for all types of campaigning. And so I thought that that would be a helpful thing to look at. So I'm going to look at what I understand to be the two primary target audiences for Oikos. The first are other students who you are working with to create this network needed to achieve your goals. And secondly, the university authorities responsible for what's taught and how it's taught. So I'm going to go to the next slide, which is looking at communicating with targets. So as I say, we've got these studies into effective climate comms, and this is so relevant to sustainability more broadly and to your agenda. So the key things to think about here are twofold. First is that it's incredibly important to be aware of the values and the frames and the social norms of the people that you're trying to influence. And what I mean by that, values are, what are the things that people think are important in the world? What are the things that they think motivate things? What are the things that they think hold society in place? What are those areas? The frames are the way that they describe the world to themselves. Is incredibly important to understand what those are. And then finally, the social norms are where people and how people behave with one another. And when you're thinking about communicating the Oikos message, the communications must resonate with the receiver's knowledge base as well as their worldview and their values. So very often, I think, and I'm not, it's a really interesting point, because I think I'm a very, very firm believer in the importance of public campaigns as an important way of actually generating a sense of outrage and a sense of what's needed to be done. And I think that they're very, very important. But I think that if you're trying to influence people like university authorities, if they don't believe that you actually understand what it is that they do and how they do it and what the pressures that they are under, it's very difficult for them to do more than to say, oh, these pesky students. And a very good example of that actually is some of the work that's gone into the divestment campaign. So it's been really interesting being part of those, because we've had these kind of two-tier elements of the campaign. So one of them has just been students saying, we know enough about climate change to say that it is impossible and ridiculous that university funds in any way are going into fossil fuels. And they're not those campaigners are not trying to say, how do the university authorities make decisions? They're just standing saying, we are going to be part of a movement that just says you've got to stop doing this. And that's been incredibly important in creating an enabling environment where people who do understand finance and investment better are able then to go to the authorities and say, it's not just, there are things that you can do. There are ways of divesting and investing in ways that are consistent with what your fiduciary duty is, what you're legally required to do as an investor of other people's money. So I think those two tiers are super important. So thinking about the values frames and social norms, but also allowing for that kind of enabling environment to be created. And then the last thing is thinking about, if you're talking about direct lobby and advocacy, you're talking about the messenger. So who is the person who has real credibility with the person that you're trying to influence? Are there people who they will feel understand them enough in order to then listen to them in a true way? So those are the kind of lessons we've learned from climate communications. So this issue around the values, frames and social norms is that emotions and values are now known to be so much more important than reason or exposure to science in shaping people's judgments and actions. And so that's why it's so important to get that right. And the frames provide this conceptual structure through which we perceive events and issues. And so different frames are going to work for different audiences. And then the social norms, we know that people, and this is becoming more and more pronounced actually, that people's social networks and their peers are much more influential than outsiders. And that's becoming more concentrated as social media becomes more influential. So we have to really get that right. So those are the kind of main things I think to think about. So what I thought we might do now is, having given the sort of framework of overall campaigning, and then thinking about approaches to be thinking about when trying to influence and communicate in the university context, I thought I would just give people, a couple of minutes to ask any questions they might have. And then I'm going to go straight actually into this interview with Jay Christopher, or maybe we should, just in interest of time in the group work, maybe what we'll do is to have the conversation with Jay Christopher and then take a couple of questions after that. So does that, if that works for everybody? Jay Christopher, are you there?
I'm here.
Great. Okay. So do people know, does everybody know who Jay Christopher is, Adriana? Should he introduce himself very briefly?
You can introduce yourself very briefly.
Would you mind, just so that people know why we're talking to you?
Please. Hi, so I'm Jay Christopher Proctor. I'm originally from the US, but I came to Europe to do a master's degree in political economy. When I was in Europe, I got involved with a group called Rethinking Economics, which is trying to influence economics degrees in a very similar way as Oikos, but with more of a focus on pluralist economics and really trying to get critical thinking and real world economics into economics. And so I worked first at actually 2 different local groups with Rethinking Economics, and then also at the international level. And then last fall, I got hired by Oikos to work as the Oikos Associate in Pluralist Economics. So I've gotten the incredible opportunity to travel around and meet a lot of Oikos groups, to go to the conferences, and really get to know this network. I guess at first as an outsider, but now I feel very, very much a part of it. And so that's who I am.
Super, thank you so much. And I think that what is really great is that the reason for now asking you what I'm asking is the fact that you do know, and you've been in so many different settings. So I would like to, because you've done all this work, you've spent time trying to influence university authority to take sustainability more seriously. So my first question is, what are your key takeaways from that work? What from talking to all the different Oikos groups and all the experience that's come out of the groups and the work that you've been exposed to, what are the things that, what are your key takeaways? What arguments have you found really helpful? What have proved counterproductive? What would you encourage people to do? And what would you have them avoid? So let's start with the first. Just simple question. What are your key takeaways from the work today?
I think one of the things that comes across the most is how different the context is at different universities. And I think you can kind of break that down in different ways, but particularly regionally and in different countries, the way that you influence a university can look very different. So in my case in the US, it seems like university professors have quite a bit of power over what they teach and what their classes are, particularly once they reach a tenure position. And so if you're trying to influence your degree, you can really just go to your favorite professors and try to start with them and work through that. Whereas in a lot of other countries, particularly in France, there's a much more centralized rule book of what's allowed to be taught in different universities. And so that can kind of it creates very different playbooks for what it is that you need to do to try to influence your university. And so that's why it's helpful to have conversations like this where we talk more generally about how we influence people, but also that a lot of this has to happen at the local level where you can talk specifically about your case. Another sort of big diverse point that we have within this movement is that a lot of the students who join groups like Oikos or Rethinking are already at the universities who are doing the best job on sustainability or on pluralist economics. And that's how these students often get interested in these things. And so when we tell people that, when people are talking about changing their degrees, sometimes you get the response of, well, my degree is actually pretty good, or my faculty is already working to change the degree. And so that kind of creates a different dynamics than for students who are at a university where they feel like they're fighting against the administration. So as we were outlining earlier, sort of when you're trying to address who you're opposing, sometimes it's not that you're opposing the faculty, that you're really working with them.
Yeah.
And one thing I'll say is that you kind of get you can get student groups that look very different, but that there's always a role for everyone in this movement. And so just two examples from my history. I was at Kingston University, where we actually had Steve Keen as our head of department, who was very actively campaigning for pluralist economics. So we worked with him. He would come to us and say, look, I have this much funding and we can hire one professor. Do you want an ecological professor, a feminist professor? Like how do we work with the resources we have to maximize this? And so instead of campaigning against the university, what we did in Kingston was try to think of how we could create materials as sort of a center of expertise to then share with the rest of the network. And so that's where the idea of creating a Rethinking Economics textbook came out of, was from this group. And that's kind of been a big, exciting success point. And just one other example is one of the main French groups, which is PEP's Economy. They have decided to organize themselves much closer to a think tank that publishes reports and papers and doesn't do a whole lot of university-specific campaigning, but tries to influence the entire national conversation, because they've identified that the real change point is this national council that can make the decisions. And so that's why it's sort of important for everyone to be involved, but to sort of know that you have to look at your own context. And then just the other main key takeaway is that this is going to possibly take a long time. So Rethinking Economics started about 5 years ago, and there's been a lot of successes, but there's also been a lot of universities where nothing's happened, or where there's not clear curriculum change. And so some key takeaways from that is that long-term relationships are really important.
Yeah.
It's so hard as student groups coming and going like every year. And so some of the best groups are the ones that have been able to build institutional relations between their groups and the university administrators. I know at Manchester, they have 2 seats on an advisory council for the economics department now. And Kingston, similarly, the president of Rethinking Kingston has monthly meetings with the heads of the department, and that these kind of relationships are really a good way to keep your campaign alive. And that sort of know, as we're setting into this, that it can be discouraging if you go through your entire academic career and see your personal university still hasn't changed. But that's the nature of the game that we're in, trying to really change something huge. And so just the one anecdote that a friend from Rethinking said last time we were together was that, think if we had had this student movement in 2008 when the world had collapsed, and we'd had 50, 60, 100 groups of students at every university able to start screaming, look, we told you so, we need to do something different. We didn't have that movement. And so the crisis came and went, and the university textbook stayed the same. And so in some senses, we're really trying to organize for our next moment, whatever that looks like, to really know that these things can change quickly. We've got to be prepared for that. And so that's a lot of the groundwork that we're doing.
Super helpful, super helpful. And I suppose just, in a way, what you're saying is that you've got to really understand your local context first and foremost. So what exactly is happening there? And then I think that what you've identified is a really interesting role for Oikos in general, with Oikos International. What's going to be held in the hub to be deployed at key moments when you need it, which we're going to come back to later in the seminar. So are there, we're going to ask people to go into groups and do a piece of group work around this issue, Christopher. So I'm just wondering if you had any advice for people in thinking about how to identify what's going on. Assume it's a new chapter. So I know that people have a lot of history and a lot of knowledge, but if you're in a new chapter, what advice would you have for people to go away to really understand what's going on? Are there sort of shortcuts that you would recommend that people take, or are there ways to find out what and where the university authorities are that will help people move this agenda fast, quickly?
I think a ton of work has been done on this, both within Oikos and in other groups, and that one of the biggest problem we have is the sharing of information, both between local groups and over time. It seems so many meetings that I've sat in where it's like, we've done all of this 4 years ago, like it's in a group somewhere. We just need to be organized. We need to sort of be able to share these things better. And so I think that's kind of having more spaces where we can talk explicitly about this, sort of using some of our conferences, some of our gatherings, regional gatherings, to really have a space to talk about what we're doing in curriculum change. That's something that I've noticed just traveling around. There's so much exciting work being done, but nobody seems to know what other people are doing. And so being able to like know if you're developing a curriculum or if you're like running campaign events, we should be able to kind of like have summaries of these things and be able to share them around. Because as you said, if you start as a new group, like changing your university curriculum is like one of the most daunting and gigantic tasks that you can imagine. And so being able to have like a playbook ready to go is such a huge thing.
Okay, so I think what it seems to me that a really good use of time and to allow us to have as much feedback and interaction with everybody who's on this in this seminar. Well, I'm going to suggest that we start the group work now. And what we're going to do is to invite you to go into group work, to encourage you to think about doing advocacy in a specific context. And Adriana will come back in terms of who's going to be in which group in a moment. We have about 40 minutes for this exercise, and as I say, we're going to divide it into two parts. The part one, you have 15 minutes to identify a key target and what Oikos would like them to do, and then we're going to come back into plenary for 10 minutes or so to give feedback and questions from the groups. And because we're going to be starting a little earlier than we thought, that we may have a bit more time for that. But I think really helpful to be thinking about what is that route to the person or the entity that you're trying to influence. And then in part two, your group is going to have 15 minutes to think about how to communicate with this target and what role your Oikos chapter will play. So we're going to, as I say, we're going to break it up into two parts, mostly so that you can bring back into the plenary any questions or insights that come out of the group work. Which will then enable us at the end to be thinking very clearly about what role Oikos International can play, and it will help us tease out what is useful to do at the chapter level, but also what Oikos International can do. So Adriana, would you like to just explain to people how this is going to work from a technical point of view?
I have assigned you trying to put a deal together with someone from your chapter. Or with someone near your region. What it happens technically, I will open all rooms, breakout rooms, and you're going automatically to your room. In case you go to a room and no one is there, just come back and I change you to another room, okay? We are having the first time 15 minutes, so 2 minutes before we finalize, I will send a message to all of you saying that I will finalize in 2 minutes. And then when the 2 minutes is up, I will bring everyone back to the plenary. And everybody will be automatically also back to the plenary. Okay?
And before you go into your groups, can I ask you to nominate one person within the group?
I guess it's better for them to nominate them.
I'm asking the groups.
You know who it is in the group. Just find one person to be the key takeaways and is going to speak for everyone. Yeah. And one important thing that is if anyone has questions before we go, I think that's the time, right? If anyone is confused, they're not sure what is going to happen right now.
Yeah, sure. So just before we go into those questions, and definitely if anybody has anything they want to ask. So what I want people to be really clear about is it's not 10 minutes plenary feedback per group. It's like if you could keep a very short feedback, because we're basically we want the time for the group discussion. So identifying the target and the specifics about what Oikos would like them to do, if you could try and keep your specific feedback to that, when we open for the plenary, we can then have a conversation about some of the issues that were raised in trying to identify that target and what Oikos wanted them to do. So as Adriana says, before she divides you all up, before you disappear into the ether, are there any questions for clarification of what this task is?
Yeah, for me the task is not super clear. So we in a group should identify the key target of Oikos and how we could reach it, or is it different meant?
So to begin with, the first part of the handout is asking you to identify the target and then identify what you want that target to do. So is it curriculum change? Is it divestment from, there are various different things depending on who it is that your target is. So the first part of the exercise is just saying, who is it that this particular chapter wants to influence? Because what we're trying to tease out here is the nature of the campaigning. Is it the sort of generating popular interest, or is it actually fairly precise lobbying? And I think going through the exercise, if you go back to the campaign strategy thing that I did at the start, it will help you think that there are different ways of approaching different strategies, different tactics. So depending on who you're targeting, you will have different things that you will want them to do depending on what the target is. Is that clear?
Yeah, that helps. Thanks a lot. And so there's in one group, one person that explains the situation, and this is the example which we are talking about in the group.
Yes, please.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
And if you haven't received your handout and you're not sure what we're talking about, just send an email to us, info@oikosinternational.org, and we're going to send the handout to you right now. Okay? So, any other question before we move to breakout rooms? So let's do it.
Okay.
I will open all the rooms right now. Have
Thanks.
fun. Levin, would you like me to assign you to somewhere?
Sure.
Let me...
Thanks.
Sophia, would you like me to assign to somewhere? Would you like to go somewhere?
Give me 1 minute just to get a drink, and then I shall.
Sure.
And then, I would like to go to a group, but give me.
Christo, if you would like to go to the room 5, you can. And then if you want to go back, just come back, and then I can assign you to another group as well.
Okay, I'll tell you when I'm
check
back.
out the groups.
Sounds good.
And you're keeping time, Adriana, right?
Yes, I am.
So I will. I'll let you know when I'm back. Thank you. Bye.
I'm also going to run for a second and then join group 5.
issues that were raised in the group conversation that would be useful to share with other people. So why don't we start with group 6?
They don't know who is the group 6. It's Jessica, Pauline, Van,
Okay.
Payne.
So Adriana, say again who is group 6?
Jessica, Pauline, Svant, and Tiffany.
Yes. Hello.
Hi.
So one-line answers to the 2 questions, key targets, and what do you want from them?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah. So we have more problems engaging the students than the administration people. So yeah, we choose the key targets as the students.
Okay.
And what we want from them is to be more engaged and actually put the time in our projects and engage in sustainability work outside this time they put on studies. And because now it's more like, that was
Great.
the one like that. So.
Super interesting, and I'm sure that there will be insights from others to think about how effectively working with students. Thank you. That's Svante, is that right?
Svante.
Yeah. Svante, thank you so much. Okay, let's go to group 5. Adriana, can you say who group 5 is?
Sure. It's Celine, Clementine, Levin, Maya, Vladimir.
Hi guys. Hi everyone. So we were talking about targeting the board of directors in order to get their support to set up the right biking infrastructure, which include parking spots, good shelter, access to showers, etc., etc. And what do I want from them? It's like their support, and the main points that we get from our discussions is that we need to have the students as a collaborative agent to reach out more easily to the board of director.
Okay, so both you've got your key target, but also you want to get to the students. That's super important. Thanks,
Exactly.
Vladimir. Okay, group 4.
The next group is Eleanor, Irie, J. Christopher, Mikhail, Catherine.
Hi everyone. So in our group, our key target ended up being the professors that are already doing a lot of the work, sustainability-wise, or just in terms of like a progressive curriculum. So they could be sort of points of contact to host more interdisciplinary conversations throughout the university or interdepartmental conversations. So really uplifting the sort of momentum that's already existing on the professor side of things.
And what would you like? So what the ask of them is basically to make sure that they're communicating better, generating momentum, is it?
Yeah, basically, or being steady points of contacts for any other changes to come from within them and us.
Okay. So anything else to say, Irie, about the nature of the Oikos? No, we'll come back to the next bit. Sorry, let's leave it at that for now. Group 3.
Yeah, I can do this. We were talking about the example of Oikos Bayreuth, and they have their economics and management faculty there is not really engaged with sustainability topics, but the dean is kind of interested in a kind of firm also with sustainability, and is also the advisor of Oikos Bayreuth. And so, we were thinking about that we could use or ask him for his support and of the support to connect with the other professors so that he can make the link and also claim for his responsibility in engaging more towards sustainability topics, because there already exist several surveys from student surveys where it's said like students want to learn more about sustainability, and also some initiatives here in Germany where networks are collaborating on reaching this goal. And so this could be something also to push him, but not just push him because he's already interested, and so to make him aware of his responsibility and ask him in this regard.
Great. So you're focusing on somebody who's already converted, but you want them to do more, basically.
Not him directly, but the other professors. So, I mean, Oikos Bayreuth is connected to the dean directly, but not yet to the other professors. And so this person can be the bridge to connect to the other professors, and then do more, also more work and suggest special things.
Great. Super helpful. Thank you. Group 3. 2. Sorry.
It's Alessandra, Fred, Sophie, Tatiana, Viat, Zvedana.
Yeah, that's me. Hi, I'm Wyatt. So I think just like a general viewpoint or general summary is that essentially, like we said it before the feed thing, is that locality of the chapter is really important, and that essentially everybody has different key targets based on the existing structure already. I guess that's just always going to be the case. And something interesting that was said by Fred is that essentially this kind of explains the lack of a toolkit for a international outlook, as obviously everybody has to focus on their own targets. Specifically with the Berlin chapter, we're quite lucky in the sense that our program is a sustainability program. So there's already like an existing infrastructure regarding professors and faculty, et cetera, that are supportive. But our main target is to essentially become, if there's a sustainability advisory board already, and we want to have a seat on the sustainability advisory board with the intention of, we're at a business school, so most of our students are in the Masters in Management section, and I'm not going to actually say that they're extremely interested in sustainability, but what we want to do is essentially provide the ability in terms of credits that these Masters in Management students can take their electives in our specific sustainability course. So for example, they're taking supply chain in your traditional, Porter and Kramer kind of outlook on what supply chain is. They can look into our sustainability supply chain class instead to have a more sustainability grounded viewpoint. And we believe that if we have a position on this board, we can actually promote this kind of interdisciplinary cross-credit sharing program. So yeah, that's essentially our goal. But again, most of the goals throughout the whole chapters had to do with student engagement. And you obviously just have this differentiation between your bottom-up approach or your top-down approach, and that is extremely dependent on the local infrastructure already.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Thanks, Wyatt.
No worries.
So last but not least, Group 1.
Oikos Tbilisi.
Tbilisi.
Hello. Hello, everyone. What we really would like is curriculum change. We have discussed about this because all students are complaining that they don't like what we are studying at the university, and we think that it's really good to help our lecturers and professors. For that, our lecturers are our key target, and we think that they had power, and they have power to help us to change curriculum, and we want and we are waiting for from them support and that students be more active and more helpful. We are waiting from them encourage to students.
Great. Okay, that is very helpful. And there are these themes which will not be a surprise to anybody about the fact that there is the curricula, there are particular people in positions of authority who you want to influence, and there's this challenge of getting access to and really finding out what's going to work in terms of the student, engaging students and getting that consistent commitment. So we'll just have a couple of minutes, I think. Thank you so much. Is it Salome? Is that how you say your name? Oh, you're muted, but never mind. I hope that.
Sorry, I am here.
Hi. So thank you very much. And I think that what would just give a chance for people to say, you know, is there anything that you would like to say to any of the other groups on the basis of what you've heard? There are these threads, which I'm sure will come back when we ask the question about what Oikos International might do for the Oikos chapters and vice versa. I do think that this is a very reciprocal relationship, but one thing that this is an opportunity for people to answer each other's questions. So one of the questions is, you know, how to get students more engaged. Another question is thinking about the routes to the lecturers and professors. So does anybody who is in this seminar, is anybody thinking that they have an answer to some of the questions that were raised in that feedback?
It's Wyatt again. I don't know if this is an answer, but I think it's possibly a quite helpful tool for chapters and maybe even Oikos International in the future. Is this idea of essentially when a chapter is formed and we as chapter representatives understand our locality the best. So maybe it would be quite a cool thing from Oikos International's perspective to essentially aggregate all the different chapters, whether this bottom-up approach of student engagement to the top versus actually tackling the professors, the faculty, and going down to student engagement from that way was established. So for example, if there's X amount of chapters and 30% are this bottom-up approach and 40 or whatever, the other percentage is this top-down approach, we can maybe start to formulate different cohesive methods of engagement. Because I think that would be, and even for these webinars, etc., I think it would be quite helpful, because if you're put in a group like in this case and everybody is essentially spending the 15 minutes saying, well, we have nothing in common, it can be a little bit counterproductive. But if we understand that, okay, I'm with these 3 chapters, which I know are, you know, taking a similar approach, not that one approach is better than another, but then we can kind of have this formulated or more organized approach to tackling such issues. If that makes sense.
Okay, well, that's certainly a good suggestion. And Levin and Clementine, if you'd like to come back to that towards the end, that would be helpful, I think, for people. So any other comments at this stage?
Pauline?
Okay. Sorry?
I think Pauline wants to speak.
Oh, hi, Pauline.
Hi. If I may, I would also like say what I considered in our talking of 15 minutes was that is, as you said, about the importance of understanding your target, and maybe also the strategy to just get, like, if you want to tackle, I don't know, IT students, to just tackle one and grab one and try to get the help from this one to just understanding the perspective of the others. And also when speaking about message, to really say, okay, these are their problems and these are maybe the hooks you can get them with. For example, like saying, like, we offer, because we had a student perspective, want to have student engagement, that you have project work and this helps your CV, or you're working in your profession just for a non-governmental organization, so that you just find the arguments that will help them also see the benefits of their engagement, besides being socially engaged. Yeah.
That's so important, Pauline, and you're sort of answering the next bit of the exercise. So I'm going to suggest that we go back into the groups and really try to think more about the sorts of things that you're talking about. So what's the best means of communicating, and what's the background support that might help you with this sort of advocacy work? So we're only going to do this for 10 more minutes, and then what we'll do is to come back into the group and really try to think more about what's the role of Oikos International, and, you know, where is this, what are the things that you feel that could be really super helpful for this type of work. So Adriana, can we do that? Can we go back into the groups for 10 minutes this time?
Sure. We are going to come back now to the same groups for 10 minutes. And Sophia this time will go around just to ask questions, and she will start with Tbilisi group.
Yeah, I'll be more there to answer questions. I'll just listen in otherwise. Yeah. And it says in the on the slide 15 minutes to think about communicating with this target and the role of your Oikos chapter. Adriana, if we could have that down to about 12, then we have more time for the plenary at the end.
We'll do that, 12 minutes.
Great, okay, thank you.
So see you very soon.
Thank you. Nice to see some of the people I met when I was out there. Hi, Irie.
It's like having lots of little friends in the computer boxes.
It's lovely. So you'll say when everybody's back.
Everyone is here.
Okay, great. Fab. So instead of doing the kind of one-line feedbacks, we're going to collect those separately. But what we thought we would do with this last time, because actually it's so useful, is to think about what does this very short and very sort of high-level exercise tell us about Oikos International, and what Oikos International, which is tiny organization with very limited resources. You've got the staff team, but you've also got all the students. What's the best way to socialize some of the learning that comes out of every single intervention that Oikos makes? And I was thinking, just reflecting as we were doing getting the feedback from the first exercise, one of the jobs that I did in my life was I worked in Oxfam International, and my job was to basically work with different regional offices and Oxfam partners on advocacy training. And it's a very similar dilemma to the dilemma that we have here, which is basically that you have these incredibly different political contexts in which the work is taking place. Very, very different indeed. And yet, there are some things that you can, that are relevant to learning for everybody in whichever context there are. And even in that very short exercise, it was pretty clear to me that, you know, there is a challenge for Oikos, and there is learning that is coming up all the time about engaging students. There is learning that's coming up all the time about engaging faculty. There are different experiences, as Jay Christopher said, you know, there are some much more centralized, some much more autonomous. But, you know, I suspect that there would probably be about 10, I don't know, 10 is a fairly arbitrary figure, but I suspect it's a quantifiable and rather small number of challenges that people face. So the question that we're really inviting you to help think about is, what is it that Oikos centrally can do, and what is it that the chapters can do that allows for that learning? And Adriana and I, before you all came back, were beginning to have that conversation. So Adriana, I'd like you to just sort of share with everybody what we were just talking about now as a way of kickstarting this conversation.
Sure. I was just thinking that we all have ideas, and we could create a living document of putting the challenges there. So if you work with students, these are things that you could do it, or with faculty, with different targets, audience. And this is a living document everyone can update whenever they have insights or something new that they have learned.
Perfect. And that sort of goes back to what Wyatt, you were saying about the fact that there's some lessons around the bottom-up approach and some top-down approach. So it seems to me that one of the possibilities would be that the Oikos International, the staff team, might work with the different chapters to make sure that there are, say, 6 buckets of things where, so you're framing it. I think it would be helpful to have that kind of collective framing about what are the key challenges. And then my suggestion would be that it would be very easy for people to upload their experiences in ways that are usable by other chapters. So that's just a starting point. What other suggestions or thoughts came out of your conversations that might help here? Because we're going to put them to Clementine and Levan at the end of this and ask them to kind of respond and say what they think of the ideas. So any other thoughts from anybody?
Yeah, hi, it's Eva from Tübingen in Germany. We also talked a little bit about Wyatt's idea about connecting Oikos chapters who have a similar approach on engaging the professors more in the curriculum, that the curriculum is more concerned with sustainability. So because every chapter has different setting and everything is individual and uses different approach. So some might talk to the dean, some might talk to the professors directly, some might more engage the students more. So if we could find out who is doing what and connect these chapters so that they can exchange their ideas and their progress with each other, might be more helpful than just connecting randomly people who are not like having the same situation and the same approach on how to do this.
Thanks, Emma.
Great if Oikos International could also maybe provide us or support us in this task.
I also really like the idea of a central living document where if I either found a new chapter or if I join Oikos as a member, I can look up possible key targets and, for example, like students, faculty, government, and possible key outcomes. Because, for example, for students, I have the outcome to either teach them and turn them into change makers or get them to join Oikos to help us reach our next key target, for example. And classic problems or solutions that chapters have stumbled upon or how they resolve problems. And I think the next step would be to get local versions of that document to tell new members, okay, our local key target is this and this and this group, and this is our current situation with the problem and solution approach.
Thank you, Fred. Any other thoughts? So we're kind of shaping this up really interestingly. So one is connecting the chapters with different approaches, another is creating this framework of what the issues are that everybody's encountering, another is related is this living document where people share experiences. Any other kind of core ideas?
We thought of reaching out to professors who are favorable to sustainability and Oikos' values and kind of creating an informal space to get them talking and sharing ideas and influencing other people, really, other faculty members or other students, things like that.
So just to clarify, Eleanor, does that mean that it's faculty from one university to with faculty in another university or within one?
I mean, I guess both. It can be
do both, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe start within the university, but if the university is already, pretty sustainable, then we share with other universities who are less progressive, I guess.
Great, thanks. Any other thoughts?
I would go on what the people before said, that it could be an approach that or to gather information or to have something you can start with, that maybe from international perspective there could be like a categorization, as you said, of challenges and so on, so that they can, I don't know, send around a Google formula and ask the chapters who are interested in the topics about, okay, what are your main challenges? How would you categorize yourself? And so that then this could be made public to everybody so that the others can find chapters who have the same interests, to make it more structured with something like this formula, and then having this living document where then with this categorization you can just share about, like, I'm university, which is a lot of central. I spoke with the dean and these are the challenges we face and this was our approach.
Super interesting. Thank you, Pauline. And I'm just very sorry, but I do want to be respectful of everybody's time, but we don't have very much longer, and I did promise to invite Levan and Clementine to give you the opportunity to just give a response from what is the staff team at the moment. The conversation could go on for a long time. There's a lot more suggestions I'm sure that people have. So perhaps you could address how they might channel those ideas to you when you're giving your response, so that people know that any ideas that they have now that they haven't had a chance to express will be captured.
One thing, Irie just wrote one idea in the chat. Maybe she can just for 1 second tell before.
Sure.
Clementine and
okay, yeah, sure.
I guess just my thought is within this sort of living document, having sort of international KPIs or like key performance indicators that the local chapters would attempt to hit could be a really nice like roadmap for us.
Perfect, yeah, super interesting. Okay, Levan, over to you.
Great, thank you so much. Sophia, thank you so much for the webinar. Always when we talk to you, EP, or you speak during our, we are so inspired. So like we always love to be with us. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Christopher, also thank you so much for your input. I've had some amazing ideas, actually a lot of amazing ideas. And this year, just as a background information, this year we created a new strategy, and so far helped a lot to develop the theory of change of Oikos. So thank you so much for that. Basically, this year we know exactly what we want to achieve as an organization, and it's quite clear, which was not clear before, that we want to transfer economics and management, education, and integrate sustainability. And now we also developed execution plan. We developed the whole strategy. But what we really need is chapters and members involvement. What Sophia already mentioned, we have small team, not a lot of people involved in this process. So what we need, your support, your involvement, and also what I was said about KPIs. It should be developed with all of us, because on the other hand, we thought about that idea as well. But on the other hand, we don't want to have like top-down approach. We want to have more like students request that I want to achieve this target. We want to give you something, our KPIs, what we think that we can hit. So this is actually what we are working on right now, and this will be coming soon. Another idea, what was already said, it's Wyatt already said, to have two buckets and two ideas, the top-down and the bottom-up. And we are already working on curricula change project, and quite soon we will present Oikos curricula. This is the working title, what we have right now. But quite soon we'll present what we think that it should be Oikos degree, for example. But it will not be just our suggestions, somewhere like 2 or 3 people wrote somewhere and just presenting you. But it will be a live document developed by you, discussed by you, and then approved by you, which will go out and we inform the world that this is what we actually want to do together. So quite interesting things are coming actually in the next few weeks, and we really want your involvement, and also you can be involved during our webinars, but also in our intranet, where you have possibility to make a discussion, initiate discussion, and we are more than ready actually and happy to contribute to that. And as an organization, we don't want to have like top-down approach, as you know, and we want you to also initiate some ideas with us, because we have so many international projects on our end as well, and we want all of your support. So I think at the end of the day, what is really important, that we realize how can we work as a network together, more than 1,000 members, how can we all together achieve what we want to achieve. And this is not only important for the world, but for all of us, how we achieve all together. So that's why it's very important that you support and help us. So I will ask Clementine to add some more points, but thank you so much. And I see so many people here, so thank you so much for joining this webinar. Clementine, please.
Yeah, thank you very much for this very, very interesting webinar. I like those webinars for one simple reason. It's like that we hear ideas from chapter members directly. And we already have, from what has been said in this webinar, a very, very good idea of what can be done within Oikos International that will answer chapters' problems and issues so that they can collaborate, and that come from the chapters themselves. So I think the next step is really to implement those ideas. So that should be done by Oikos International with, of course, your help by filling in those documents. The chapters should fill in those documents and use those documents, and not only those people who are here, but also the members that are not here and are part of your chapters. It's really important that those documents and whatever we create are shared all throughout the network. So I guess I won't be long because it's already time to go. It's 11 p.m. in India. So I just wish that everyone keeps working on it, because I see a lot of motivation and it's the key point. And one last point is, this is not only for Oikos. Wherever you're going to work, you're going to use those methods and these methodologies. So it's really important for you as well to understand the process, because it's beyond just what you're going to do for Oikos. It's for you as a person and as a worker wherever you're going to work. So thank you very much, Sophia and G. Christopher and Adriana and Devon for this webinar.
Well, thank you from me, and and thank you. It's so nice to see you all, and it's for you, it's for your work, it's also for this little planet of ours. So joint project we've all got to keep going for. So it's so fantastic that you're all doing this, and I hope that you keep going, because we badly need you.
Thank you so much, Sophia, for being with us and guiding us through this process and learning a little bit more about how we can do it and how we can work and being better in achieving our mission. And now I just want to say thank you for all of you to also actively participating. Without you, the webinar wouldn't work. It needs your active participation. And as you know, this webinar is part of Oikos Leap. That is our leadership program. And soon, in the next months, we are going to have a possibility for you, if you would like to be in the 9-month program, that is the advanced program, to also register. And we will start in October at the Future Lab, which J. Christopher is organizing, and he will be also in contact with all of you for you to also be part of the Future Lab very soon. And we will meet not only online but also face to face. Before we go, I invite you just to unmute yourself, and we can do a big clap for Sophia and say thank you for what she has done. So we can unmute everyone together. Thank you.
I'm gonna thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. Have a nice evening, everyone. A good day for those that are starting the day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you so much, Sophia. Thank you so much, J. Christopher.
Goodbye, everyone. Bye, everyone.